So we're going to start a mobility flow session. This is a great active recovery for an off day. It's going to be a combination of some yoga moves, some stretching, and some joint mobilization, maybe stuff you've done in the weight room with Coach Carl. And it's going to be in a flow style, so you should be able to do this on an off day just to help yourself recover, a nice active recovery. This is a great thing to do to help open up your joints, increase your mobility, and ultimately increase your performance. So we're just going to get started. Feet should be about shoulder width apart, and we're going to take a nice deep breath in, arms over the head, and let it out. And again. And once more, nice deep breath in. And when you let this out, you're going to fold at the waist, dropping your arms, dropping your head, and trying to get your palms to the floor. You should feel a nice good stretch in your hamstrings here, dropping that neck, no tension in the upper body at all here. Good, we're going to hold this for a few more seconds. And when you're ready, you're going to slightly bend your right knee and extend this left leg. You should feel a nice good stretch in the back of your hamstring here. And when you're ready, you're going to switch, straightening that right leg, bending that left knee, feeling that stretch all in the back here. And at your own pace, you're just going to alternate between the two. You can sink your hip into this a little bit more and feel it in your glute if you need, and just keep alternating. Good, and when you're ready, you're gonna have nice soft knees, and we're gonna roll up for 8 seconds, nice and slow. Good. Now we're going to widen our stance a little bit, so we should be a little bit more than shoulder width apart. Feet should be facing forward. We don't want our toes turned out or in, just like this. And we're just going to do a nice lateral lunge, stretching this inner groin area. You should feel a nice deep stretch in here. You can plant your hands here if you need. Knee shouldn't be going out or in, should be in line with the toes. And we're going to push up to the other side, stretching this right groin and inner thigh area. Good, and we're just going to alternate at our own pace, deepening the stretch with each rotation. Good, and 2 more. Now again, we're going to bend at the waist, hands to the ground, deepening that stretch on our hamstrings again. You can pulse through the elbows to try and increase the stretch as well. And then when you're ready, you're going to bend your knees. And we're going to stand again and try and get deeper into that stretch. Dropping the head, no tension in your neck here. And bend again. And up. And once more, we're going to bend and stand. And when you're ready, we're going to roll up for 8 seconds again. Good. Now we're going to turn to the side, and we're going to get into a lunge position. Right foot forward, left foot back, nice deep lunge. It's really important here that your hamstring is engaged. You don't want this bent at all. You want to activate that hamstring, pulling that knee up nice and straight, curling your pelvis under, chest nice and proud. If you need, you can put your hands on your front knee here and push back. And we're just going to hold this. You should really be activating your core with this move. If this is easy enough for you and you need to make it more challenging, you can bring your hands up over your head. If that's still too easy, you can pulse back for 5 seconds. Good, and when you're ready, hands down, back knee down, and straightening that leg. We're gonna widen our front stance here to open up our hips a little more, and we're gonna try and get our forearms down to the ground. You should be stretching out this front hip flexor here and really feeling that in the front hip. Good. Now we're gonna rise back up again, bringing this foot back in line with the middle of the mat, planting our left hand right in the inside of that foot, rotating up to the ceiling. Make sure you're syncing up your breaths here, nice deep breaths in and out. Good, and back down. Planting hands on both sides of the leg, we're gonna lean back, and we're going to stretch out this front leg. Very important here is you don't want your back arched over this at all. You want a nice flat back, hinging from the hips here, and almost sitting back into the stretch so you feel it all down your hamstring. Make sure you're breathing through this. It's very important when you're stretching to do some deep breathing. With every exhale, the muscles relax and you're able to sink into that stretch a little bit more. And if you want an extra challenge here, you can point and flex the toes. Good. And now we're just going to alternate back and forth between that hip flexor stretch and the hamstring stretch, maintaining that flat back, that good posture here, and just repeat this at your own pace. Good, and a few more. Good, now we're gonna get into sort of a half kneeling position here. And if you can, you're going to reach back, grabbing this back foot and stretching. This is incredibly important that you focus on your balance here as well. Good, now we're gonna drop that back foot and we're gonna work on some ankle mobilization. This might be something you've done in the weight room with Coach Carl to help with increasing your squats and things like that. So we wanna make sure our heel is planted to the ground. Our heel should never be coming up in this exercise, and our knee should be nice and straight. So we don't want our knee going out or inward at all. It should be nice and straight over our toes. We're going to lean forward, trying to get as small of an angle here as possible. Knees over the toes, holding for 2, and then back up. It's incredibly important to keep your heel planted in this. Back up. And we're gonna do 6 more. 2. And last one. Good. Now we're going to place our right hand on our right hip. We're going to reach over with our left hand and bring our hip inward like this. You should feel a nice stretch in the outside of your hip here. Good. And now we're going to alternate. I like to switch hands for this. I think it's easier. And we're going to open that hip up, pushing it out and really opening that joint. If you need to flatten your foot like this and go on the edge of it, that's okay. Good, and switch again. And last one. Good. And now we're gonna come back into tabletop position. A big thing I want you to remember here is that you should keep your hands under your shoulders here. Nice and under your shoulders, and we're gonna do some cat-cow. So when you're doing the cat position, I want you tucking your spine, belly button to your spine, and engaging your core by tucking your chin. So you should tuck up like this. And then when you go into the cow position, you want to drop your low back as much as you can, really sinking into this, allowing the mobility in your low back to increase. And what's important here is to not look straight, but to look up to the ceiling and engage your neck. So you want to sink down and look up to the ceiling. And at your own pace, you're just going to continue doing this. Be sure to sync up your breaths with the movements. Good, 2 more. And back down. Good. We're now going to do some side rotations. So what we're going to do is look over our right shoulder to our right heel. We should feel a nice pinching in our side here as well. And switch to the left. So this is a full body movement. You should be activating your side here when you're turning. And just rotate at your own pace. Good. Now you're going to walk your hands out into child's pose. And if you need to, you can open your knees a little more and spread them to help sink into this. You want to make sure your hips are open so you can get as flat as possible. Good, and when you're ready, we're going to push up into a cobra position, pressing our hips to the mat, chest nice and proud, pushing off with those hands, keeping our elbows tight. And when we're ready, we're going to do 5 cobra push-ups. This is similar to a tricep push-up. We're keeping our elbows nice and tight. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And push back into that child's pose. Now we're going to walk our hands to the left side of our mat, and we're going to lean into that right shoulder. We should feel a good stretch in our right shoulder, maybe our right lats as well, and just breathe. Good, and when you're ready, you're going to walk your hands to the right side of your mat, sinking into that left shoulder and breathing. Good, and when you're ready, walk those hands back to the middle, and we're going to push back up into our cobra. And when we're ready, we're going to push up into downward dog. While you're here, you can walk the feet out, stretching those calves. Good, and when you're ready, you're going to walk your hands back to your feet. Nice soft knees. We're going to roll up for 8 seconds. Good, and now we're going to repeat the same sequence we did with the left leg forward. So we're going to get into our lunge position. Left leg forward. Make sure we're activating this back leg. This knee should be straight and activating that hamstring, pushing away, rising with that chest up. Nice, good posture, activated core. Again, if you're looking for an extra challenge here, we can rise the arms up. If this is still too easy for you and you want to get a little more difficult, you can pulse back. Good. Now bring the arms down, lower that back knee and back foot. We're going to widen this front left leg again and stretch out that right hip flexor. Forearms to the ground if you can, and breathe. Good. Now we're going to bring that foot back in towards the center of the mat, planting our right hand on the inside and rotating up. Give me 3 good deep breaths in and out here. Good. Bring those hands down, and we're going to extend that right leg again. Remember we talked about before with the posture, nice flat back, hinging from the hips here, sitting back into this stretch. Almost as if you were a sprinter and you were taking off from the line. That is very much how you should be here. You should be activated. This isn't just a slumped over stretch. This is an activated stretch. And now, if you like a little extra challenge, you can point and flex the toes. Good, and now at your own pace, we're just going to alternate back and forth between that hip flexor stretch and that hamstring stretch. Good. Now we're going to get back into our half kneeling position, and we're going to reach back and grab that hip flexor, trying to maintain our balance and breathing. Good. You can drop that back leg, and we're going to return to that ankle joint mobilization we did again, keeping that knee straight over the foot. Pushing forward, heel planted down, holding for 2 seconds. And back up. We're going to repeat this 8 times. Good. 2 more. Good. Now we're going to plant that left hand on that left hip, reaching over and bringing that hip inward. You should feel that good stretch on the outside of your hip here. You might even feel a little bit of pinching in the front area of your hip by your hip flexor. That's normal. Good. Alternating hands. Open that hip up now. And switch. Good. And last one. All right. Now we're going to get back into our tabletop position. Remember, hands should be directly under the shoulders. Nice flat back here. And we're gonna do some wrist circles to warm up our wrists. So we're gonna do 5 nice big circles to the right. Good, and switch to the left. Wrists are often an area that we overlook because we don't often think about them, but it's incredibly important that we load our wrists and that we do exercises like this, especially to help with lifting and things like that, but also for our sports as well. A lot of the sports we do involve our wrists and we don't give them enough attention as we should. Good, now we're gonna rock back and forth on the wrists. Good, and now side to side. Good, now we're gonna do a little forearm stretching. This is my favorite stretch of all. We're gonna turn our hand around backwards. We're going to be planting our 2nd through 5th finger here. Our thumb is gonna come up and that's okay. So we're gonna bend our elbow, keeping our fingers planted, and we're gonna stretch out our fingers and our forearm and back up. And we're gonna do 5 of those. You should feel a nice stretch in your wrist and forearm with this. Good, and now we're gonna alternate, reversing the other hand and stretching out those fingers and that forearm. And last one. Good. Now we're gonna sit forward, crossing our legs, and we're just gonna roll our wrists out and do some deep breaths in and out. Good, and reverse directions here, rolling the wrists out. Nice deep breaths. Good. And now we're gonna reach forward, palms as far as we can out, and we're gonna drop that head in between our shoulders and just try and relax. Deep breaths in and out. Good. Gonna walk our hands back. And now we're gonna sit on our on our right hand, keeping our right shoulder away from our ear. We're gonna reach over gently and stretch the neck. You don't want to force this too much. The goal here is keeping this shoulder down and just a nice light stretch in your neck here and some deep breaths. Good, and when you're ready, you're gonna look down as if you're looking down to your left pocket, turning. You're gonna place your hand in the back of your head and push down gently on the neck. You should feel a nice stretch in the back of your neck. It might even run down your back a little bit. Good. When you're ready, we're gonna switch. We're gonna sit on that left hand, reaching over the top with our right hand, and gently stretching the neck to the side. Good, now we're gonna again look down as if we're looking at our right pocket, hand on the back of the neck, and gently pushing downward. Good. Now we're gonna sit forward again, make sure we have nice good posture here, and we're just gonna roll from ear to ear with our neck. So we're not gonna do a full circle. we're just doing a nice half circle down to kind of loosen up what we just stretched out. Make sure we're not hunching over. We should have a nice proud tall back here, just focusing on the neck. Good. Now what we're going to do is we're going to take our right hand, putting this on our left thigh. We're really going to grip here because we're going to lift up and lean over and stretch out this whole side of our body here. Really lean into this. Let this hand be your anchor and stretch out that side. You can even drop the neck if you want as well. And breathe. Good, and back up and switch. So planting that left hand on that right knee, reaching over top and dropping into it. Good. Now we're going to sit back up again. We're going to get into our butterfly position. This is really important because we're about to get into some deep squats next. So we want to really loosen up the inside of our groin here and that inside hip joint. If you need to, you can either put your hands on your knees, your forearms here, and just press down a little bit. If you're noticing your knees are stuck up here a little bit more, what you can do is you can pulse them, and that will help kind of loosen up the joint and drop them down. But just press here for a little bit of pressure on the knees, just opening those hips up. Good. Now when you're ready, we're going to stand. And we're going to get into a deep squat position. So you can have your feet slightly turned out here. Nice posture. And we're going to drop all the way down into our squat, placing our hands in front of us. Ideally, we want our feet flat on the ground here. If you're up like this, that's okay. That just means that your ankles are a little bit tight. So those lunges we did earlier, those ankle mobility is really important. So we're going to reach forward. And what we're going to do right now is keeping our hands planted. We're going to stand, straighten our legs, bring our butt up into the air, dropping our neck, and stretching those hamstrings. Good, and we're going to come back down into that squat, and we're going to repeat that 3 more times. And straighten. And back down. Up. Back down. And once more. Up. Good. And down on this one, we're going to get into our prayer pose, which basically means we're taking our elbows, planting them on the insides of our knees, and pressing out. What's really important here is you want a nice tall chest and you want to curl your pelvis under. If your back is arched and your butt is up, you're not going to be stretching the inside of your legs that much. You need to curl your back under, engage your core, and bring those hips forward and really push against these knees and open up those hips. Good. Now what we're going to do is we're going to release the pressure on our knees and we're going to let them fall in. And we're going to push them back out. And we're going to repeat that 4 more times. So in and back out. And once more. Sorry, 3 times more. And back out. You can place your hands to the ground. We're going to come back down onto the mat, and we're going to get into our pigeon stretch. So we're going to bring our right leg back, our left leg forward. Ideally, we want this front leg as straight across as we can. For a lot of you, that's not going to be achievable. You're going to be more bent at this angle, and that's okay. Over time, you will work and increase the stretch to get more straight with this front leg. You should really feel the stretch in your deep hip right here. If you don't feel it, you need to sit more into the hip. And we're just going to hold this for about 15 seconds. Good, and when we're ready, we're gonna switch, and we're gonna bring that right leg forward, this left leg back. This might be a point where you notice that you have some different mobility and each hip feels a little different with this stretch. That's normal. A lot of people have hip imbalances. The way you can kind of improve on that is by noticing which hip is a little tighter and doing some extra mobility on that side, some extra stretching to try and get the hips as equal as possible. Good, and when we're ready, we're gonna come back up again. And we're gonna get into one of our last stretches. It's gonna be a frog stretch. So what's important with the frog stretch is that your feet should be flat and the inside arch should be on the ground and your knees should be out like this. We're gonna bring our forearms to the ground, and this is a stretch that we don't wanna force, we don't wanna push too much, we just wanna sink into it as best we can, opening our hips. Another important cue is that your back should not be arched here. If your back is arched, you're not stretching the inside of your groin. You need to curl your pelvis under and really sit into this stretch in your hips. We also don't want to hold this for a long time because it can become painful if we push too much. So this should just be a light stretch that you continue to improve upon over time. Good, and we're gonna plant our feet under and we're gonna sink back into our child's pose. This is gonna be our last child's pose of the day. I want you to do some deep breathing here, some reflection, and just relax. Good, and when you're ready, you're gonna push up into your cobra again, and up into your downward dog, walking your hands back to your feet. A slight bend in the knees, and we're gonna roll up for 8. Head should come up last. And that's it. Hope you enjoyed it. Please try and do this on your days off. It's really, really great and will really help your mobility and your performance. Thank you.